What do you call it when a deputy throws away a knife during a missing persons case and no one cares for 3 years? An oversight? A coincidence? Or a cover-up hiding in plain sight? This is the part they didn't want you to ask about, the part they hoped you'd skip. Let's talk about Deputy Dan Kohler. Let's dig in. Before we dive in, let me address something head on. Some of you might think I'm going overboard, digging into the minutia. And truthfully, maybe I am. But I've got two reasons for it. First, because Tentacle Nation deserves the full picture, not just the headline summary or what the Sheriff's Department found convenient to share. You get it all, even the weird stuff, especially the weird stuff. And second, because this case is a mess of nuance. It's not a straight line, it's a spiral. And if we ignore the small things, the discarded details, we end up swallowing a version of the story that's been scrubbed of truth. So today, we're zooming in on a man who's barely been mentioned in the headlines. Dan Kohler, a Medina County deputy who worked in Lafayette Township, knew Bryon Macron personally, according to him. And just days before Bryon disappeared, he tossed a folding knife into a fire station dumpster. This dumpster's seen a lot of action, folks. Bloody towels with unknown DNA. Now we have knives. So we have two interviews today. One was only 9 minutes, Dan Kohler, which is completely absurd to me, only having a 9-minute interview of someone who claims to actually have known the victim and was a deputy for the area, Lafayette Township. Then you have another secondary party who did some business with Bryon shortly before his disappearance, and he garnered a 39-minute interview. But here's what we know from Kohler's BCI interview on January 14th, 2020. Quote, I was cleaning out my car, had a lot of Wendy's chili, crackers, rubber gloves, and a black-handled folding knife I found under the passenger seat. That's, end quote, Dan Kohler, BCI interview. He says he dumped everything, food wrappers, rubber gloves, business cards, and yes, a knife, into the trash at the fire station. Not logged, not tested, just gone. And what cruiser was he cleaning out? Car number 78, an actively assigned patrol vehicle, not just some junker out of commission. Now, here's where the hair on your neck should be standing up. Every law enforcement agency I have ever worked for has a similar policy. The same policy. Inspect the vehicle before you take it out. Search it again after each person is placed inside. Why, you ask? Because your cruiser is an extension of the evidence chain. Anything left behind, especially a weapon, narcotics, could mean the difference between justice and a hung jury. So why wasn't the knife tagged? Why didn't anyone seem to care where it came from? Why did they wait 3 years to interview the guy who tossed it? When BCI finally got around to asking Kohler what he thought of the investigation, here's what he said. It was hush-hush, but handled by Cartwright and Ross. Hands down the best. The best. Let's talk about what the best looks like for Medina County Sheriff's Department. This is Jim Cartwright, the initial lead investigator in the Bryon Macron case, a man whose investigative resume was so thin he admitted himself, in his own words, that he hadn't really done anything like this before. His idea of experience, maybe a shoplifting case or two, no homicide training, no forensic certification, nothing beyond a crime scene technician class from 1991. Let that resonate for a second. 1991, DNA wasn't even really fully around until around 93. So let that sink in. This is the same guy who left multiple blood samples untested or dismissed them without explanation. Didn't canvass homes that were within earshot of a possible struggle, including a house where a witness heard sounds of distress at 4 a.m. Took no formal statements from individuals who worked closest with Macron. Waited over 3 months to start pulling elimination DNA from township staff. That's who Kohler says is hands down the best. It's like calling the Titanic's crew the best sailors on Earth because they waved as the iceberg came. In any legitimate agency, Cartwright's name would be attached to an internal affairs review, not a gold star. To make matters worse, in a follow-up document from the Medina County Sheriff's Office, we find out that, yes, the knife came from Kohler's cruiser. Yes, it was acknowledged, and no, it was never collected. That knife, it was quietly dismissed as explained, because Kohler admitted to trashing it. That's it. No forensics, no DNA swab, no attempt to preserve or analyze it. The logic seems to be, oh, it was his garbage. Cool. Case closed. And here's where I really need you to lean in. Lean in. Lean in. If law enforcement can't even do the basics right, how can you expect them to handle the big stuff? This isn't about solving complex puzzles or breaking down psychological profiles. This is about basic police work. Search your vehicle, document everything, don't throw away any potential evidence, even if it has nothing to do with the Bryon Macron case. Who's to say it didn't belong to some other crime that was transported in Unit 78? Don't wait 3 years to ask basic questions. If a deputy finds a knife under the seat of a cruiser in the middle of a high-profile missing persons case and just throws it out and no one thinks that that's worth a follow-up until BCI stumbles into it 3 years later, then you don't have a real investigation. You have a cover-your-ass operation dressed up as a homicide inquiry. Let's be real. If they can't log a knife, how do you expect them to cross-check surveillance footage? If they can't secure a car, how do you expect them to secure a crime scene? If they don't follow up with a deputy, how do you expect them to follow the truth? The truth is, they didn't. They never intended to. And that's why Tentacle Nation exists. Because someone has to keep pulling the thread until the whole mess unravels. Before we roll the tape, and it's digital tape, I understand, on Dan Kohler's interview, let's talk about what should have happened and what didn't. Dan Kohler wasn't just some anonymous deputy. He was assigned to Lafayette Township. He knew Bryon Macron personally, had conversations with him, even bought jewelry from him. A necklace for his daughter, a ring for someone he was dating. But despite that connection, despite working in the township where Macron disappeared, and despite being tied to a discarded knife found in a cruiser, Kohler was not interviewed when the case broke in December 2016. Not that week, not that month, not for 3 years. It wasn't until January 14th, 2020 that BCI finally sat him down. And when they did, they got 9 minutes for a deputy who supposedly knew the victim, was aware of threats being made to the victim, was tied to a trash can full of potentially relevant evidence, and here's what else you should know going in. Kohler admits he threw away rubber gloves, food wrappers, receipts, and a folding knife, all from car number 78, a Medina County patrol unit. He says he dumped it all in the fire station's trash can. He confirms there were extra patrols around Macron's house due to an anonymous threat related to the fire department, but couldn't remember exactly when, and no official report was ever filed. And while he claims he wasn't involved in the investigation, the department saw fit to call him in when his trash became relevant. So with that context, here's what he had to say 3 years later.
Okay, we're on a recording, and today's date, I'm going to set this over there. Today's date is January 14th, 2020, and it is approximately 4:40 p.m. I am currently at Street in Richmond, Ohio. Present with me at this time is Dan Kohler. And Dan, for the purpose of the tape and identify your voice in the tape, would you state your full name and spell your last name?
Dan Kohler, Kohler.
Okay. And what's your date of birth, Dan?
8/29/73.
Okay. And Dan, you used to work at the Medina County Sheriff's Office, and as part of your duties there, you worked in the Lafayette Township area. Is that, if I understand it correctly?
Yes, we were contracted out there.
Okay. And you knew Bryon Macron?
Yes.
And tell me what you know about Bryon Macron.
I met him when he became the trustee. He was a real nice guy. I actually bought some jewelry off of him.
Mm-hmm.
a necklace for my daughter and a ring for a girl I was dating.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime I'd see him, we'd sit there and talk to him. He was a nice guy.
Were you any part of the investigation after his disappearance and stuff like that? Were you active in any part of that?
No, the only thing I was is everyone got called in to start checking through the township.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, that was detectives, and the BCI was there.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I had nothing to do with anything.
Oh, okay. He disappeared on December, I think it was 15th is the last time he was seen alive, and on the 16th he was discovered missing, and early in the morning. Did you ever know about any of the arrangements he supposedly had made with deputies to come to the township hall for security or anything?
No.
He never talked to you about it?
No.
Had he ever talked to you about any kind of security arrangements or requests or anything like that?
At the fire department, I remember him talking, saying, we had an extra patrol out because supposedly an unknown caller was threatening him about the fire department.
Mm-hmm.
So we had an extra patrol out on his house.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
How long had that happened?
Oh, I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
It was before all this stuff happened.
Okay. I mean, was it a couple of weeks or a couple of months or?
Maybe a month or so.
Okay. Okay. And that was just kind of like anybody that's in the area checking in patrols, that kind of stuff?
We had a book,
logged on it?
And we would call out an extra patrol at that.
Did you know anything about Macron's extracurricular activities he was doing?
No.
On the side? Any females or company acquaintances he made, and maybe do you ever hear that he was taking people to the township facility?
No.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry.
No problem. As I understand it, there was people supposed to come in that morning, December 16th, and when they came into the township office, there was, they discovered a scene, had some blood in it, and some of the furniture was overturned and stuff like that. Did you know anything, or were you there on any of that time?
I was called in later that day to the scene because of all the garbage that I threw out of my car in my little duty bag.
Okay. Tell me about that. When did you throw that stuff out, if you recall the best you can?
Day or two, maybe? I don't know.
Day or two prior to that?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I was in car 78. I was cleaning out my duty bag. I was eating a lot of Wendy's chili and stuff, so I know I had a lot of crackers.
I just had to pause for 1 second here. What is up with the interviews with Charlie Snyder letting everybody eat? Now, so obviously there's somebody else in the room, all right, with Dan Kohler. All right, you can hear a female's voice. She's microwaving food. You have Mike Costello eating a full-out meal, and now you have somebody microwaving. These are just... These interviews are just odd to me. I apologize. I try not to stop, but I could not believe what I was hearing, so my apologies.
And receipts and rubber gloves. I think they might have been pink or orange, because I know Lodi had the pink gloves. I was cleaning out my car, reaching around, just grabbing all the junk, and just threw it all in the trash.
Mm-hmm. Now, it was a county car?
Yes.
Car?
Yeah.
Did you have a drive home? Is that what you had? Or
no, it was...
Okay.
Yeah, it was just one of our cars in the back that I was assigned to.
And you found a knife in the car?
Mm-hmm.
And that was part of the stuff that you threw out?
Yeah.
What did the knife look like, if you recall?
Oh, I think it was black. It was one of them folded ones. It was junk.
Like a pocket knife?
Yeah.
Okay. It wasn't like a kitchen knife or anything like that?
No.
Okay. And... So you put it into a trash bag and then put it into the dumpster, or you just throw it loose in the dumpster?
I do it. I think I actually used the fire department trash can, because I know I was outside cleaning through, and then brought stuff in.
Okay, and then threw that in the dumpster or threw it in the trash can?
Do it in the trash can at the fire department.
Oh, inside the fire department?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. And you think that was about a day or two before his disappearance, maybe?
Somewhere around there.
Okay. Do you know anybody that had any dislike for him or anything like that there, as far as Macron?
My opinion, everybody liked him.
Yeah.
I really liked him. He was a nice guy.
Yeah.
and he was a real good trustee. He took care of the deputies.
Mm-hmm. Was there anybody in the sheriff's office he was closer to than the average guy?
Probably Sergeant Sanford. He would ride out with Sanford all the time.
Is that right? You used to ride with him?
Yeah, but Sanford was the liaison for the township.
Oh, okay.
So
that could be part of that too then. Okay. After his disappearance, did you hear anything as far as inter-department that caused you any kind of concern or alarm?
No. Cream sugar?
No, black sugar.
No, I didn't hear anything. I mean, there was, just the investigation, and the detective bureau had it hush-hush.
Yeah. Was there anything that looked like it was purposely mishandled from anything that you saw?
No, sir. I didn't see anything, but Detective Cartwright and Sergeant Ross, those guys are hands down the
They
best.
handled it?
Yeah, I mean, that's who I think.
Ross was off during that period of time, if I understand it correctly. I think he made a trip or something, was out of town. So.
I know BCI was there, and I know Cartwright was, but since Ross was in charge of Cartwright, so it was getting done properly.
Yeah. When they found the body, go ahead and take it. When they found his body floating in the Chippewa Lake, were you involved in any part of that?
Yeah, I was one of the first ones there. I set up me and some other deputies just blocked off the roadway until the fire department did what they had to do.
Okay. Did you see his body when he brought it out?
Yeah, when they brought it out at the other side of Chippewa Lake, I was there. But yeah, that was about it.
Okay. Where he was at in the lake, could you tell before they brought him out where he was at?
No.
Did you see it? Okay.
I couldn't see anything.
Okay. Are you originally from the area down there? Do you know the area pretty well?
No, I'm from Barberton, but I know Chippewa.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I know Chippewa Lake.
Okay. There's been a lot of conjecture about where he was at in the lake and how he got there and stuff like that. Do you have any thoughts or ideas of how he ended up where he was at? Or
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. No, I just bet you.
Oh, yeah, but he'll get on your lap. No, I don't know.
Okay. I didn't know if...
All right, this is, again, another point that I'm going to stop because I'm just sort of realizing Snyder has no forensics of how Bryon Macron's body ended up where it's going or where it ended up. Instead, he's just using everybody's opinion that lives in the Chippewa Lake area as to how his body may have come across there. And that, again, no issue with asking those questions, but to solely rely on someone's plain observation of how they think Bryon's body made it there is a little disturbing.
There's all kinds of talk and all kinds of rumors going around and stuff like that there. So, is there anything that I haven't asked you that sticks in your mind? Do you think I should be aware of? Reference Macron's disappearance or subsequently his death or anything?
No.
What do you think happened? Do you have any idea?
I've heard rumors that it was a suicide. I mean, that's pretty much what everyone was saying.
Did he ever act that way with you? Did he ever give you the impression he would kill himself or hurt himself?
No. And like I said, he was a great guy, and it caught me off guard.
Yeah.
It caught a lot of us off guard.
Yeah. His wife's pretty taken back. Did you know his wife too?
I met her a couple times, yeah. She seems real nice. I mean, that seemed like a good family.
Yeah. He, like most of us, have a couple daughters, and I understand he's real close to his daughters and they're real active in their life and stuff like that. So, okay. Well, if you don't have any other questions for me, and I don't really have any more for you. My biggest concern is answering the thing with the knife. I know that's going to pop up. There's going to be all kinds of other people asking questions about it. So
yeah, I'm just cleaning out my car. And
now, it wasn't your knife. It was a knife that you just found under the seat of the car. Do you recall in the car where you found it at?
I believe it was in the passenger area.
In the front passenger
under
area?
The seat type area.
Okay. Well, thank God you found it there and not
in the back
hands
seat
of somebody. Okay. Well, thanks a lot. Go ahead and stop this for now then. I appreciate it.
Let's talk about Bryon Macron and money, because if you believe the official version that this man, a public official and father of three, was in such deep financial and emotional despair that he stabbed himself 6 times and wandered into a frozen lake, then riddle me this. Why was he still cutting refund checks for wedding rings? Enter Sergeant Chris LaFonde. He wasn't working the case. He didn't know Macron from politics. He knew him because in 2015, LaFonde got engaged. And instead of going to a chain store, he got introduced to Macron, who sold jewelry on the side. He was like a middleman for Kay, Zales. During the BCI interview, LaFonde stated he paid a couple $1,000 for an engagement ring, then another $925 for matching wedding bands. But the bands were wrong. Not once, but twice. He says, we picked them up, looked at them, and they weren't even close to what we needed. And this wasn't some casual Amazon return. LaFonde and his wife were flying to Jamaica for their wedding. They were in crunch time. Bryon didn't disappear. He didn't dodge. He didn't lash out. He said, no problem. I'll send them back and get you your refund. Let that sink in. This is the fall of 2016. Weeks before Bryon's disappearance. He was playing phone tag a bit, he said. I sent the second set back. I'm working the Pancake breakfast at Lafayette Town Hall on Saturday. And then at the breakfast, face-to-face, Bryon hands LaFonde a refund check for $700. This isn't a man spiraling out of control. This is a man still showing up in his community, still fixing problems, still doing the Pancake breakfast, still trying to make things right. And yes, Bryon mishandled the order. The bands were wrong. But instead of bailing or hiding behind excuses, he owned it. Now, you tell me, if this guy was in such dire financial straits that a suicide was his only option, why bother? Why refund a ring? Why attend a Pancake breakfast? Why care? Because Bryon Macron was still planning his life. He wasn't making peace with death. He was trying to tie loose ends together, not cut the rope entirely. The story alone doesn't solve the case, but it blows a crater-sized hole in the suicide theory, because people on the verge of ending their life don't typically worry about a deputy's wedding ring. They don't go to a Pancake breakfast. They don't explain themselves in person. They vanish, they fold, they shut down, but Bryon did the opposite. All right, Tentacle Nation, if what you're hearing makes your blood boil, then just don't sit back. Step in, join the hunt. This platform isn't just about exposing failure. It's about building something better, smarter. With you, we've got a live Discord server up right now, a digital war room where we can break down cases in real time, audit timelines, analyze surveillance footage, challenge forensics, and shed bad narratives like paper. If you want, go to the link that I have right here, the infamous.xchief, click the Discord link, and get in the room. This is where the real conversation happens. And if you've got something to share, a tip, a lead, a document, a weird detail, or a full case you think nobody's looking at, send it right here. The one-stop shop link to my contact information. There are tip submissions and case referrals right when you click this. Click on the tip submission or case referral right now. We take case submissions, old cases, cold cases, cases that smell funny, cases where the official story doesn't match the fact, cases that slip through the cracks. Leave us your tip or your entire case file using the same link right here, the infamous.xchief, or email it directly to the infamousxchief@gmail.com. If it's unsettled, unfinished, or unbelievable, we want to see it. We don't care if it's a name, a timestamp, a photo, or a gut instinct. If it feels wrong, we follow it. We dig deeper, and we shine light where others won't. Because Tentacle Nation isn't just a platform. It's a force multiplier for truth. So hit the Discord, leave a case, drop a tip, and be part of the reason this time they don't get away with it. So let me leave you with this before we roll into the Christopher LaFonde digital audio. A guy who didn't work the case, didn't know Bryon outside a ring sale, and had no law enforcement connection to the investigation, was interviewed by BCI for nearly half an hour. Dan Kohler, on the other hand, a fellow deputy, worked the same township, knew Bryon personally, and dumped a black folding knife into a trash can just before the body was found. He got 9 minutes. 9 minutes. And they didn't even ask him about Bryon's state of mind. about their conversations about patrols, about whether he ever suspected something was wrong. They asked him about the knife, and that was pretty much it, besides them cooking another meal. So when someone tells you this case was thoroughly investigated, ask them why the guy selling the ring got grilled longer than the cop who found the blade.
Okay, I'm on the tape now, and we're started, and I got to put my glasses on so I can see the fine print here. Today's date is July 17th, 2019. The time now is 10:34 a.m. I'm Special Agent Charlie Snyder. I'm with the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation. I'm currently at the Montville Police Department, and I am presently with Sergeant Christopher Allen LaFonde. Sarge, for the purpose of the tape and to identify your voice on the tape, would you state your full name and spell your last name?
Sure. It's Christopher, middle initial A, last name LaFonde, L-A, capital F as in Frank, O-N-D.
Okay. And what common name do you go? Do you go by Chris?
Chris is fine.
Okay.
Yep, Chris is totally fine.
Chris, how long you're a sergeant here at Montville? Yep. How long have you been with Montville Police Department?
I started with Montville back in 2004 in a part-time capacity and was hired full-time in November of 2005 as a full-time officer.
Okay. Did you have prior law enforcement?
I actually worked in Lafayette Township as an auxiliary for about I graduated from the academy in 2004, so about 6 months.
Okay.
About 6 months with them.
During the course or the tenure of your involvement as a law enforcement officer, and tell me if it's happened before or some other way.
Sure.
Did you happen to know, meet, or have anything to do with a Lafayette Township trustee named Bryon Macron?
Yes.
And how did you first meet him? How did that come about?
Sure, absolutely. So I was introduced to Mr. I've always said Macron, but Macron.
I think that's probably the correct spelling.
I was introduced to Mr. Macron actually through my Chief Grice. Chief Grice knew Mr. Macron on a personal basis. Actually, I believe his wife babysat for Chief's kids.
Okay.
So he had known Bryon for some period of time, and it would have been back in 2015. I was getting ready to get engaged, and Chief obviously knows that Bryon was in the diamond business.
Okay.
So when Chief knew that I was starting to look for a ring, he said, "Hey, instead of going and buying from a retailer or something like that, I'll introduce you to Bryon, and you can see if he can help you out in finding a ring." So I didn't meet him in a professional capacity. I never knew him from a law enforcement access or standpoint, or from the police officer to township trustee or anything like that. I didn't know him before that.
Okay.
So that's how I was introduced. I think Chief gave me his contact information. I reached out to him, called him, and he said, "Absolutely, be more than happy to help you. Let's meet." And we met over at his house I believe it's on Ivandale. And started talking.
When you met him?
So I couldn't give you an exact date, but I can tell you that it would have been early in 2015.
Okay.
Would have been the first time I met him. I would guess, again, if I had to estimate, it was probably January or February.
Okay.
I was engaged in May of that year. So you needed so I needed a ring by then, and that would have been probably early in 15. But it was, I think we probably worked together for a couple of months back and forth. My wife was my soon-to-be wife wanted a very specific ring, so I had kind of an idea of what I needed, and that's why we worked together for a little bit prior to that. So.
And eventually, you pick out a ring, and he provides you with that ring.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah. So I basically told him, like I said, we met a couple times at his house, and it was described to me that he was essentially, as he described it, he was a kind of a middleman. He was a broker, let's just say. So he sold rings and diamonds and all that to your retailers, like he used K Jewelers, Zales, all those places. So the rings that you would buy in those places, he was the supplier for that.
Okay.
So yes. So we met. I kind of told him what I was looking for. He came up with a couple of ideas and had a guy in, I think, New York or something that made rings custom for him to then potentially sell on to these retailers and whatnot. So we came up with an idea, and like I said, he had that made. and then it looks like from my records, from my financial records, I made final payment to him on that ring, on the engagement ring, around 5/13 of 15.
Okay. And if you don't mind me asking, what did you pay for the ring?
Sure, absolutely. The total cost of the ring was $5,350.
Mm-hmm.
And
when you say 53, you're talking about $5,350.
Correct. Yeah, okay. $5,350. And I put down an initial $500 payment or down payment, obviously, for him to have it made or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And
then
in
addition to the $5,350 or
no, that was included. And then the final payment that I had in my records was $4,850 to him on in around that May 13th or time frame, May 13th of 15.
Okay.
So
and from talking to Sanford, apparently there came a time when your wife wanted to get a matching wedding band.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct. So what Bryon had told us was obviously the engagement took place and we didn't get married till September of 2016. Mm-hmm. So there was some time gap, but then we were engaged there. So he had said that if my wife wanted matching wedding bands to match the engagement ring, that he could basically go back to that same designer, let's just call it, the same designer, and get those rings made to match exactly what you wanted. And my wife was interested in this. I wasn't familiar with it before, but stacking bands. So she's got a wedding band or she's got the engagement ring, a wedding band, and then there's like another one that goes on top and you can continue to add.
All three of them go together.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and they all look basically the same, right? Minus the big stone. So he asked us, or told me if I was interested to come back and meet with him again and we could get those going. Okay. So that's basically what happened. We started to get close to wedding time. Again, couldn't give you exact dates, but we were married in September of 16. Mm-hmm. So I would say early summer of that year, maybe even let's say April to May-ish, I reached back out to him and said, hey, we're interested in these wedding bands. He said, come on over. This was the first time he had met Jackie. And come on over. We'll make sure that we get you something that you want and that matches and everything like that. So we went over and met with him. Jackie kind of told him what we were looking for. Again, it was pretty basic because it was exactly what she had minus the
mount.
Yeah, the mount. Exactly. Thank you. And so that the cost for that was going to be $925 for that wedding band, and I want to say, if I'm not mistaken, there was a secondary, so she was getting 2 bands for that $925. I put down, actually, I think at that point, since I had already worked with them and everything seemed fine to me at that point, I think I paid him ahead of time. I know I paid him ahead of time. I paid him that full $925. He was going to order them and get them. So then what happened basically from that point is now we start to get into summertime a little bit, weddings getting closer, and Bryon is not nearly as responsive this time in getting back to me. So I think we were, again, if I just had to guess on times, let's say we were probably in the June-ish, maybe July area, and my wife is starting to get a little nervous that, hey, we got married out of the country, got married in Jamaica, so we weren't going to be here, and I think she wanted to have all of her ducks in a row and make sure that we had wedding bands, of course, before we left. So I called him, he got these bands in, and it turns out that they were nothing like we expected. They did not match my wife's ring at all. Which we were quite surprised by because, again, we got the first ring from him and it was pretty simple of what we wanted. So we went over to pick them up. My wife looks at them and realizes this isn't what we need. And he says, okay, no problem. We talked about it again. And he said, I think he was going to go back to that same designer who I thought he had gone to the first time, but maybe he hadn't, and get them to basically...
Did he tell you he hadn't? Or
it was...
indicate that he hadn't?
It was my impression that he was just going to... Again, he had he had our order list of what he'd given us the first time. So I thought, well, this is pretty obvious, right? We just want the same thing, he'll go back. And when we went back and said it's not the swhen he said, well, I don't recall if he had tried to get them from somewhere else. I don't know where he got that specific first set of bands from, but when we said, hey, look, this isn't close and we're looking for basically this exact thing, then he said, well, I'll just go back to the designer for it. There was a little bit of, again, maybe I had done some assumption, but I guess I thought it was pretty obvious. It's his business. I figured it would be pretty easy as to what he was doing. So at that point, he said, I'm going to go back and have them. I will reach out to the designer. He's still got your plans, if you want to call it, the blueprint for your ring. I'll just tell him to basically make the same thing without the mount. Good enough. So let's say that was July-ish, sometime in there. So we wait a couple of weeks, and I don't hear from him. And
now you're getting in a crunch time.
Yeah, now we're getting into crunch time. And it's getting closer and closer, and my wife's getting more and more nervous that this isn't going to happen. So we end up meeting with him, let's say, maybe it's probably even start of August. So we're getting married at the start of September in Jamaica. Start of August, he gets the rings in. And again, this time we assume it's going to be very cut and dry. We've already done this once. So we get over to the house again. And his wife was, for what it's worth, his wife was there for most of the, she was in and out of the house and bebopping around the house. They have a couple of kids. I met his girls a couple of times when we were there. But, so we sat down with him again, and he showed us the rings, and again, they weren't close to what we needed. So at that point, we had decided, again, we're in crunch time. My wife said, look, if these aren't right, she has a good friend in Columbus. She says, we're just going to go to where my friend has gone in Columbus, and I'm going to buy rings because we're not going to risk going to the wedding without these bands.
Right.
So I tell Bryon at that point, I said, hey, you send these back if I have to pay something for them or whatever because they were specially made or whatever, that's fine, but we're going to go a different direction. And he said, no problem, I'm going to send them back. And I think you'll be able to get a full refund. It'll just be that I won't be able to get you that refund until they get returned, and then I get the money back from the diamond designer, whatever. Fine, good enough, no problem. So we end up going down to Columbus, buying other wedding bands, have the wedding, everything's great. Of course, in the midst of all that, and the honeymoon and things like that, we get back, and I kind of forget about it a little bit for a couple of months. And my wife, I think, is like, hey, did we ever get refunded for the wedding bands that we didn't get? Bryon had also gotten me a tungsten actual wedding band for me that was too big. So in the process and right before we had left, he said, hey, I'm going to order you a smaller one, and when you get back from your wedding or whatever, we'll have that. So I started, when I finally got back, I called him and I said, hey, Bryon, no hurry, but I'd given him $925, and I said, just wanted to know kind of what the status was. Now the phone calls got kind of less and less. It was harder to get a hold of them, and I wasn't.
What period of time are we talking about now? After September?
Yeah, so we're probably talking. If I had to guess, let's see here. Yeah, we're talking pretty soon after September, so probably the end of September. We were gone for a week and a half or so, and so probably the end of September we get back. My wife reminds me. I said, okay, great, I'll call Bryon. So we had this little kind of back and forth. And he tells me, which was so strange at one point, I called him and I said, hey, I'm just checking on the status of the rings. And he said, well, so there were two sets of rings now, remember. We had the first set that were wrong and the second set that were wrong. And this is where things...
Plus you have your tungsten.
My tungsten ring. And I have one, and now you can see as we sit here today, I'm wearing a rubber one, and that's what I wear now. So it wasn't a big deal. I wear the tungsten one for kind of formal stuff. So I wasn't overly concerned about that, but we had that out there too. And I think he had kind of said... I don't know what those tungsten rings cost, but he said, hey, I'll just give you that or whatever the case is. So I wasn't overly concerned about it. Get back into September. I call him. Again, we maybe play phone tag a couple of times, and I said, hey, what's the story? He said, hey, I sent back the first set of rings, and I don't know that he even mentioned sending back the second set, but he said, I'm still waiting on that money to come back to my account. No big deal. Fine. That's no big deal. Okay. So we go a couple of weeks, probably a couple of weeks. So now we're getting towards maybe let's say mid-October. And I call him again, and I had seen him because he drops his kids off at Wade Elementary. So I work, obviously in some cases I work day shift, and I was over there doing school patrol, and I watched him drive by me, and I thought, oh, haven't heard from Bryon in a couple of weeks, check on the status of the rings. There he goes, just driving by me, I'm going to give him a call. He doesn't answer that call. I leave him a message. He calls me back and tells me that he's out of town.
And you just saw him.
And I just saw him, right? So now I'm like, what? What's going on here? But again, at the end of the day, it's it is what it is at this point. Again, I how I was introduced to him and who he is over there, I'm still thinking, okay, whatever. I don't know why he's going to tell me he's out of town. And I never addressed that. And I probably should have said, hey, I just saw you. Why are you lying to me? But whatever. And so I call him. We play probably a couple phone calls back and forth. And he says, I'm working at Pancake Breakfast at La Lafayette Town Hall on Saturday. I was working on Saturday. He said, I've sent the second set of rings back. And he says, I know you're not going to believe this, but you have to believe me. I'm telling you the truth. Both sets of rings were lost in the mail on their return trip to the jeweler. And I said, okay. And now, again, we've spent some time here. I mean, the first set of rings was before our wedding. Significantly before. I hadn't heard about it, right? And, of course, he had got me the second set, so then I wasn't worried about the first set because it was going to be an even exchange, as he kind of described. So I was like, okay. And he says, but don't worry, I had both of them insured. And I said, okay, well, I'm only expecting, if anything, I'm only expecting $925 back. Right? So I don't care what you're doing on your business end and how you handle returns and lost things. I don't care.
Did he tell you how he shipped them back? Do you remember if he said, postal or FedEx or?
Well, I wouldn't want to. If I had to guess, it was postal, but it was insured. But then, it could have been FedEx. It's been a while now. Charlie, I don't want to say, but I feel like it was postal because I said, they lost both. And he's like, well, yeah, but they were insured. I always insure these and stuff like that and whatnot. And I said, okay, again, whatever. And fortunately, I guess we weren't hurting for the money by any stretch. So it was like, okay. Again, it's a lot of money. I don't want to indicate that $925 is not a lot, but it's like, okay.
And not like your life depends on it.
I'm not paying the mortgage and things like that. So it's like, okay, and now it had kind of been to the point where after the phone call where he had told me that he was out of town, I'm thinking, I don't know what's going on here. And to add insult to that, by this point we had also figured out that my wife's actual engagement ring, we had taken it to him to resize it. And when he had resized it, somebody had done it improperly, and you would assume that a band would be equal width all the way around. When you looked at my wife's band from the bottom of her hand, it was like thread thin on the bottom and wide on the top. So around the side.
You're talking about as far as the width of the actual band?
Yeah, so if you look at my band here, if you imagine the top of the band up here and down here, imagine the band cutting in to the width of like the blue band there on mine to very narrow at the bottom.
Did they enlarge it or?
It was enlarged.
Okay,
I think it was too tight. So
they do that by hammering it, and that's probably what. Instead of putting a piece in, which they normally do, and then smooth it out, it looks like you may have just put it on an anvil and hammered it out.
And stretched it, right? Yeah. So it was uber thin at the bottom. And so my wife's like, this doesn't look right. And again, I had said, well, I'm going to finish up dealing with this, and then I'll talk to Bryon about it and say, hey, we'll take it back to him and say, hey, this isn't right. Because he had said, if anything happens to the ring, during our engagement, she had lost a couple of the tiny diamonds on the band. And he had told me when I bought it, like, hey, if you ever lose those, just bring it back and I'll replace them. It's warranted for essential purposes. I'll replace them. And she had lost a couple of those. I had dropped it off with them, and he had replaced those stones in the actual engagement band. So I said, hey, when I meet up with him about this, I'll bring up that issue and we'll try to figure that out. So he tells me, fast forward again, he tells me, hey, meet me at this Pancake Breakfast and I'll give you your money back. I said, no problem. He says, I got to be down there anyway. So I zip over. Actually, I wasn't working Saturday. Now I think about it, because I was in my personal car. But I jet over there on Saturday. I meet him at the Pancake Breakfast. It was also strange to me, just thinking back on it now, that I walked up to him and he it was a weird interaction. He had asked me to come there to meet him so he could give me this money back. And I walked up to him and he almost acted like he didn't know me, which was just strange. And I said, hey, Bryon, he was, he was cooking pancakes or whatever. And he's like, oh, yeah, let's go out to the parking lot. So we go out to the parking lot. Now, I had worked with him, as you know, for multiple times, and he sold me the other ring. So we got to the year at that point. Right, yeah, we got to the parking lot, and he's like, hey, I can only give you $700 back. And I was like, okay. And Charlie, at this point, I'm thinking, $700 is better than nothing, right? If for all this, my wife has already gotten new bands, all this other stuff, it is what it is. And he said, I still I think the other package, he was still waiting on the insurance from the post office, apparently on the second package. And so he says, I don't have that back, but when I do, I'll give you the rest of the, what it would have been, I guess it would have been $250 or whatever. No, it would have been, I'm sorry, what did I tell you? It was $925, so it would have been $225. I'll give you the rest. And I said, that's fine. And he said, something to the effect of, it was a Saturday, don't cash this check till Monday. And I thought, oh, geez, I'll be lucky if this thing actually goes through, right?
Yeah, but it doesn't hit the ceiling when you...
Right, exactly. So I deposited it, and I waited, right? And the bank never called me and said it bounced or anything like that. So that was the $700. So he refunded the $700 back, and that was it. And to be honest with you, I think sometime after that, I never spoke with him again after that point. I don't recall ever even reaching out for him because I thought at this point
you got 700.
I got 700 of the 925.
Yeah.
Chalk it up as this was a bad experience and whatnot. And I never reapproached him, of course, about my wife's ring or the band rather. So yeah, that took us into. He issued me. I deposited that check into the $700 check on 11/2/16. So that gives you a little bit of a time frame as far as that goes. So that pancake breakfast was sometime around then in November. So
the engagement ring, how big was the stone on that?
So that was a little over a 1 carat stone.
Okay.
So, go ahead.
Yeah, you think I know?
I think you know where you're going. Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah.
No, go ahead and ask.
My question was, did you ever have the stone evaluated? And if you did, what was the results of that?
Sure, absolutely. So after Bryon went missing, right, and then, of course, all of this kind of shadiness with the rings and the lost in the mail and all this other stuff, I'm obviously now somewhat highly concerned that and looking at the quality of my wife's, she had taken it, I think, to some jeweler at some point after this, and they had said, you've got to replace that band or that band is going to break and you're going to lose the whole thing. So when he had given me the original engagement ring, he had given me paperwork with it. The GIA paperwork.
Right, the assay on the diamond.
Exactly, that said it was all certified and everything like that, and it was engraved on the back of the diamond with the serial number or whatever number they put on the back. So now I'm quite nervous that this is this real? Now am I looking at, did I spend $5,000 on a ring is it even legit? So we take it to a place called Jewelry Art in Hudson in January of 17. So a little bit after the first of the year there. And we basically take that ring as with the band as adjusted as it is and everything like that, and say, just give us an appraisal. I had the diamond paperwork, the GIA sheet, or if that's what it's called or whatever, and took it into them and said, this is what I know, just want an appraisal on this. They came back at an appraisal of $6,740. Now, Bryon had told me that when I had bought it from him at the $5,350, that he was giving me basically cost. He says, I do this for, obviously I know the chief, I do this for friends, I'm not making any money off this deal, these are my prices. He told me the ring was valued at $9,800 when I bought it. Okay, so we go in there and $6,740. So again, I'm a little bit surprised by that, right? That it's obviously not as advertised. One of the things in the appraisal that came back is he had said that the band that held the main stone was 18 karat white gold. Turns out it was 14 karat, so it wasn't what he obviously said. We ended up obviously having to replace that band, and the cost to replace the band to what it was supposed to be originally from the diamond seller actually in Columbus, which is where she got her other bands, was about $2,000. $2,050, I think, is what I paid to replace that band. And now the stone came back exactly as advertised.
Okay, so it was a correct stone.
It was the correct stone. The serial number matched, everything like that. Now, I don't know. I had no experience with appraisals on jewelry before this, but they don't appraise individual pieces parts. They just gave me the whole thing. I think that diamond seller gave us $50 for the other band, the bad band that Bryon originally gave us, and then I paid $2,050 for the new one. So I don't know if the value, that $6,740 that they gave us, I don't know how that all, because I asked that. I said, and they said, we just appraise the whole thing. They don't cut down values.
They probably do it by weight and by approximate count of the carat count of the diamond.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And then the other one had little diamonds in it and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a all-encompassing, value. So that's what we got. So we ended up replacing that band. We sold the actual original band back, the engagement band, I guess I'll say back, and now we're the only thing left is the original stone, which, like I said, they were able to confirm on that appraisal does match the paperwork and the serial
Sanford
number.
was under the impression it was a junk stone or it was paste.
No, and I was glad, obviously very happy to hear that at least it was a good stone, and that the paperwork that he had issued, the stone appraised back to the same quality and clarity and all that other that I somewhat forget now since it's been a while since we've done.
Do you know anybody else that has dealt with him as far as jewelry that had similar type of instance?
I know that Chief bought I think he told me an anniversary band from Bryon, and when all of this came up, I don't think Chief was even interested in dealing with it because I told him, I said, hey, I'm going to get an appraisal now. I said, I'm worried that I have nothing here. And, and Jackie's not going to be happy with that. I'm going to end up going to buy a brand new ring and all this other stuff. She's walking around with
are kind of funny down
right.
there,
She's walking around with a Walmart band now and a Walmart stone. I'm going to have to replace it, and I'm going to chalk this up to this was
lesson learned.
Yeah, lesson learned. So I know Chief did, but I also know because he told me that he didn't do any follow up to see if anything was real or if it was as advertised or whatever, and it wasn't. I don't think quite to the obviously near to the value of the engagement ring and stuff like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't imagine it would be.
I know also that like when I was at his house a couple of times, there were other guys coming in. I know, according to what he told me, he was doing this side business or whatever he was doing with other officers and all these people that he had met through contacts, whether it be the township or whatever. I don't know anybody personally. I never referred anybody to him, after this, but.
Did he ever give you receipts and stuff like that?
Yes.
Did he give you just a blank receipt?
No,
or did he actually have a company type receipt?
No, it said, and if you need those, I can get those to you.
Okay. But you can just scan them and send them to you.
Sure. DCM Consulting was the name of his business, and then it had his home address and his phone number, my information on it, and if I recall, I think my name was misspelled at the top. I think it was LaFonde or something like that, which again is. But so we had that, and then the diamond paperwork as well. So you're welcome to. I can scan those to you.
If you just give me a good scan and send it to me, I'll put it as part of the interview process.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else you know about him, or even rumored after he disappeared and eventually his body was found? Did you hear anything from the area or from anybody?
No, we obviously followed it. I was actually. He went missing. Help me out when he went missing, because I can't remember now.
December 16th.
Okay, so December. Yeah. December 16th, he goes missing. I was then in the FBI Academy.
Oh, is that right?
For January through March of that year. So actually, when he was found, my wife called me and said, hey, it's on the news. They found him in Chippewa Lake. And then the sheriff's office was running with that investigation and doing all that kind of stuff. So, not other than, obviously, the rumors floating around about what had happened to him. And, obviously I talked to, and I can't remember if it was Captain Ross. Who was the one that handled the...
Ross was on vacation when he disappeared, but he eventually assumed the investigation.
Okay, so then I think after all of this panned out and he was found and things like that, I think I recall the chief and I had a conversation, and he said, well, maybe you want to reach out to Ross and fill him in on this other business of this lost rings and this, insurance business and all this other stuff. So I reached out to him and again kind of told him a brief story of, hey, if it helps, I don't know where you're at in your investigation. I don't know what's going on, but this is what I know. Like I said, I only met him ever at his house. And then at the Pancake breakfast, obviously. He told me it was kind of interesting. Well, I would assume it was true, but he told me about the business just generally, traveling and how he'd fly with diamonds and stuff like that, and going to shows out in Vegas and all that kind of stuff. Just how the diamond business works, because I wasn't familiar with it, and we got to talking about it. Told me obviously he was a Marine. And talked about that quite a bit and was pretty proud of that.
Did he ever tell you about carrying guns, or that he would carry a firearm, or do you ever try to show you his firearm?
No, never saw any guns.
Okay.
And I don't think, most of the time that we talked, I was very interested in I'm a private pilot on the side.
Oh, is that right?
So I'm interested in aviation.
You and Mark Kohler.
Yes, exactly. Kohler, yes. Yeah. Matter of fact, we're supposed to fly together at some point here, but I know he's busy. So I asked him, again, traveling, he's like, I'll travel with $1 million worth of diamonds in a carry-on bag. We stay with them. We put them in the overhead compartments and all that kind of stuff. But now thinking of that, obviously, I would surely guess he wasn't flying armed. Otherwise, they would have figured that out. Mm-hmm. But so that's what we talked about a lot of, is that, and just, he would talk about maintaining a low profile as he was traveling with these, the diamonds and stuff like that. And when he showed me stuff at the house, it was always in big cases, like travel type cases.
Like a catalog case?
Exactly.
That size?
Yeah, so it wasn't like he was showing me 2 rings. He would, they're coming out of, little bags and, all looked, by all intents and purposes, professional. And, he would have multiple cases. Like when I first looked at engagement rings, multiple cases of, here's different options of different things, and, appeared to have a lot of rings and things like that. So, but no, I mean, nothing else that I heard, as far as, after all this happened, you wonder what other type of business he was involved in, or if there was other things going on, in the background, or whatever. Yeah. But so and like I said, really, to be honest with you, until the end, when I called him and he said, "Hey, I'm out of town,"
and he just drove by
me, and then we had the whole I haven't heard back yet. I'll reach out to you. I think there was a couple phone calls where it's like, "Hey, I'll call you by Friday," and you never call, so I have to call him back. And that's when it started to get kind of like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
The first situation with the engagement ring, nothing. I mean, no issues at all.
Yeah.
When we got it, again, other than the resizing issue, which was a little bit later, appeared to be as advertised. It looked exactly like it was supposed to, and everything looks good. So I didn't think twice about it at all.
And the fact that, that he's supposed to be a professional and stuff like that there, that, he's handling, it wouldn't be unheard of for somebody in that position to do that kind of side business too.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and so...
how many firemen do you know that do home repair, and policemen that do home repair on the side, and all of them, they do it well,
Right.
You expect them to do it well. So.
Right, working side jobs, and it was obvious to me, again, Chief referred me, so that was kind of okay, hey, this is a guy that Chief knows and obviously trusts in, and I obviously think he did. There was no reason that, anybody, and, his wife's around, so it's not like, there was nothing secretive about what we were doing. Right. So it was like, okay, yeah. And again, he's issuing me paperwork because I asked for that. I said, when I buy this, I want, can you give me paperwork for the diamond, the main stone specifically?
Right.
Make sure that this is, even though it seems legit, that, and a receipt, an invoice, so that, it shows that I paid you some amount of money in case, I don't know, you come back sometime later and say, hey, I sold Chris this ring and he never paid me for it.
Yeah.
Or change the value of it, or do whatever.
And because of the nature of our business, we're always a little bit extra careful about that anyway.
Right.
I drive my wife nuts because I keep every receipt that I keep every receipt that I throughout a day or throughout a week. It all goes into a box. She goes, why do you keep all those receipts? That's because you can track everything I've done on those receipts.
Yes, exactly, and that's just it, right? I mean, that's how you keep track of things, and like I said, we're inherently a little suspicious.
Yes, absolutely.
And again, post fact on all this, it's like, oh boy, when we go get it valued, like I said, I was glad to hear that it wasn't worthless, and like, hey, this is like Target jewelry and cubic zirconium and things like that. Then it would have been like, oh boy. Now we're in some real, now I'm in it real deep, and the wife's going to expect that, I repurchase this all over again, so, but.
Yeah, when I talked to Stanford, he was under the impression that the total ring and everything was only worth about $800 then. And I went, oh man.
No, that fortunately wasn't the case.
Yeah,
so,
good.
I guess I look at it and I say, if it cost me $2,000 at retail to purchase the band that it was supposed to be on the engagement ring initially, so we take $2,000 off the $5,300 I paid, right? Or I'm sorry, take $2,000 off the $6,740, and we're down to $4,740. I basically paid retail, and so he obviously was. Maybe he was getting these for his cost. He's getting them at his cost, and he is making money. On the side, and
I'm sure there's a scam in there somehow.
I would love to know. I mean, I know you guys have a full case investigation, and I'm not privy to it, but my guess would be is that this is the tip of the iceberg, and there is all kinds of things going on in the background. You know what I mean?
I think you're probably right.
Yes. And I look at this, and if I came to you, Charlie, and you're going to do home repair, and you're a law enforcement officer, you say, hey, I'll cut you a good deal, I still expect you to make money. I still expect you're not going to do it for free. Right? So when Bryon says, hey, this is the value and I'm not really making anything, in my mind, he's making something.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, he's not doing it out of the kindness of his heart.
No. And
especially working out of his house.
Well, right. Exactly. Yeah. He's not doing it out of the kindness of his heart. And I get that. Same way when you go to a car dealership, I expect that the car dealership's going to make money, even when they tell me, of course, that they're not.
When they tell you it's 20% below MSRD, they're still making about 20% on it.
Right. Yeah. They are, right?
Yeah.
So, so you kind of look at that, and again, when I looked at this and it all washed out, and I came back and I said, well, okay, I got to pay this $2,000. I guess then the value of the ring he sold me was probably consistent with what I got.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So, but
okay, I'm gonna go ahead and stop this now.
So here's where we land. A deputy admits to throwing away a knife during the middle of a missing persons case. Nobody collects it. Nobody tests it. Nobody even asks him about it for 3 years. And when they finally do, they give him less time when it takes to microwave a burrito. That's not oversight. That's orchestration. Because this case wasn't built to find the truth. It was built to survive scrutiny. Just enough paperwork to look official. Just enough questions to claim it was investigated. And just enough silence to make sure no one ever connects the dots. But that's where we come in. Because here's what they're not counting on. Us. Tentacle Nation. The ones who rewind the footage, audit the timelines, pull the threads, and don't stop until something unravels. This isn't just about a knife in the trash. It's about what they threw away with it. Accountability, credibility, maybe even justice. And we're not letting them bury it. Stick around, because the deeper we dig, the louder the case screams. Be loud, be heard, shake the system until the truth falls out.